Good morning. It's time to get woke. My name's Murray Rothbeard. This is your woke news.
We're doing some data analysis on the Hawaiian volcano. We've got deadly storms, increasing space radiation, and a look at the cosmos. We also have eruptive activity on our star, so let's start there over at spaceweathernews.com. We're coming initially to 193 angstroms of light from ionized iron in the corona. Not much to see at first, no sunspots, no solar flares, and the solar wind has calmed considerably, along with geomagnetic conditions. But with the coronal hole stream potentially on its way from the now departing northern opening, does look like another arm to the polar extension is wrapping behind that brighter region too. Let's come back to 171 angstroms for a moment to make sure you do catch the eruptive behavior. It's that plasma filament we mentioned yesterday, and it did indeed have its coronal exodus. Coronagraphs from LASCO aren't updated yet, but that one's going to miss Earth. Let's use Mount Merapi to kick off a volcano discussion. It did go off again yesterday, by the way. But what I want to do is focus on Hawaii. One struggles with conflicting feelings of horror at the losses and awe at the power of the planet. Now that the flow has reached the ocean, there is a surge of toxic gases in the region as well. The key point this morning is on the seismic wave side of things. When just looking at magnitude 4.5 and higher events, we have undergone a 100% shift from true earthquake activity at the crust to only explosive volcanic eruptions at the surface. This gives confidence in two things: that a major eruption will be picked up and reported with the service, and that a collapse or catastrophic slide of the southeastern flank would show up on the quake feeds too. That's about as good of news of warning as you can get. Bad news in Africa, where Yemen, Somalia, and Djibouti all saw effects from that cyclone that drove out of the North Indian Ocean. 15 dead confirmed so far and rising. Let's get a spot of positivity because the rest of the news is like the first part. Water levels in the Aral Sea showing tremendous recovery since just last year. Always nice to see things like that. Now on to this. Dr. Tony Phillips, one of NASA's top solar physicists, while we operate the data and graphics site spaceweathernews.com, he does the blog spaceweather.com and has my jealousy over the name. But his crowning achievement is with the kids and their contributions to the ongoing radiation environment understanding as we approach the modern cosmic ray maximum. Dr. Phillips has encouraged people to look into Earth's weakening magnetic field as well, and today we are reporting their latest readings confirming the trend towards that maximum in cosmic energy input as both the flux from our star and protection from the universe in the magnetosphere weaken considerably. Last bit of news comes from the preprint archive at Cornell. Despite the name of the paper, I'm not sure using just gamma bursts will give you an answer as they do attempt to do, but their observations do allow for good guesses about the reionization period of the cosmos and also that a prevailing theory of galactic-type dominance during that period is likely incorrect. We greatly appreciate your support. We've got your wind maps, water run on Null School, and shots of our star to close. We'll do this all again tomorrow, right here, but right now it's 4:55 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.
As you watch this slickly produced little ditty, I want you to keep in mind that right now, one of the primary concerns in our modern day political experience is the influence of Russia on the United States politics. I want you to think about this for just a minute, my friends. Who really has influence on American politics? Who really has influence on American culture? Who really has influence on our finances, for that matter? I present to you that it's primarily the British government that has influence on our finances, and it's primarily the UK that has influence on our finances. Indeed, they may be the single biggest primary influence on our finances, on our culture, on our banking system, on where we use our military at, for that matter. So keep that in mind, my friends. Keep that in mind when you think about who really influences things and where all this Trump-Russia madness came from in the first place. Because it's GCHQ that started all the spying on Trump. It's GCHQ that told the FBI that they needed to watch Trump, that they had information on him, that he was colluding with the Russians. It was their spies that were in the Trump camp trying to be agents provocateur. Just keep all that in mind, and then keep all the princess propaganda that's come out in your entire lifetime, and all the great things about the British royalty when they're actually nothing more but a bunch of ghouls and pedophiles. I'll continue on now with the woke news.
Researchers will say oil is made up of all types of organic remains from the prehistoric times. These organic remains have decayed over time and have been pushed down through the earth and compressed until eventually, after millions of years, becoming oil.
Crude oil and natural gas. Where exactly do they come from? Well, their formation occurred in a process that took millions of years and are the remains of plants, animals, and microorganisms that once lived long ago, way before the dinosaurs. Today they are known as fossil fuels, based roughly on the Latin word fossilis, meaning dug up. Crude oil and natural gas were created from biotic materials, which are basically the remains of tiny marine plants and animals that once lived millions and millions of years ago in an aquatic environment. Through the years, these plants and animals died and were buried by layers of sediment, sand, and water. Microorganisms fed on the decomposing organic material in a process called biogenesis. more layers of sediment eventually build up and bury their remains deeper and deeper within the Earth. The enormous pressure from these layers combined with the heat from beneath the Earth's crust essentially cooked the biotic materials within certain rock layers to form the crude oil and natural gas deposits we have today.
This theory has so many holes. The research on this material is not very prevalent, but I managed to come up with enough information to determine oil is not what we have been told it is. And so let us begin our research. And so the deepest a dinosaur fossil has been said to be found is around 1.5 miles beneath the earth. But the deepest oil drill is said to be around 6.5 miles beneath the earth. And so how are they able to collect oil 6.5 miles beneath the earth when they haven't found any real signs of animal bones nowhere near that deep? You see, for the theory that oil is actually fossil fuels would require a massive amount of animals and plants all to have been compressed through this natural process that turns them into oil. And so I could see how if dinosaurs were found 1.5 miles down, there would be plenty of other organic materials as well that would have been able to go through the process to become oil. But since there has been no real signs of life beyond 1.5 miles down, I would have to dismiss that oil is actually fossil fuels because there wouldn't be enough signs of organic matter 6.5 miles beneath the earth. And so I believe that crude oil has been determined to be fossil fuel in order to create an element of scarcity for oil. It's the old supply and demand trick. And so upon further investigation, I discovered that when it came to titling oil as fossil fuels, that the Rockefellers may have been involved in that whole process. And from the information I heard from an oil tycoon, it appears that it was probably a lot of lobbying involved for that name to stick so that we all consider oil as fossil fuels instead of a natural occurring process of the earth, as we will describe in more detail in this video. And so they wanted to name it something specifically that would create this scarcity factor. And by naming it fossil fuels, it's a subconscious suggestion that this stuff is limited in supply. When in fact, according to my research, oil appears to be something that is being generated by this earth, and there's been many reports that oil wells have been depleted and automatically fill back up almost as fast as they can take it out. I have found reports and articles that this has taken place across the world. So I believe oil can be pretty much found all across the earth. And so oil was first said to be found around 1859. But there is contradicting reports because China was said to have been drilling for oil around the year 347. They were said to find oil about 800 feet below the earth. In fact, Chinese have been said to have been using fossil fuel coal as far back as 3,000 years ago, around 1000 BC. And so coal is said to be pretty much the same stuff, prehistoric remains of organic matter as well. So, but the first official recording of coal was said to be around 1679. And so according to these reports, oil and coal have probably been known to mankind for thousands of years, although modern reports suggest that crude oil is only less than 200 years old. And so I believe mankind probably knew about this oil for a while. It's just that they didn't really know what to do with it until about a couple hundred years ago. I believe once they started realizing that they could use it for engines and cars and stuff, that's when they really started to suppress the information about how it can be found and stuff like that, because there actually is many natural petroleum seeps on this earth. I mean, there's locations where oil just pushes itself up out of the ground through fractures of the earth. And these are called natural petroleum seeps.
The whole process usually takes at least 1 million years. At the molecular level, oil and gas are hydrocarbons made up of hydrogen and carbon atoms. The constant pressure and movement of the Earth's crust squeezes oil and gas through the pores or spaces within rocks. Some oil and gas reaches the Earth's surface and seeps out naturally into land or water.
And so these natural oil seep areas suggest to me that oil can be found pretty much anywhere. Oil is probably not as scarce as we have been told. And the Earth does seem to be able to produce it naturally. I believe there's a natural process that happens beneath the earth, and oil seems to be found mostly around tectonic plate areas. And so that almost suggests to me that oil has something to do with the tectonic plates. It must have something to do with lubrication of the tectonic plates, I would guess. Or could the earth be some type of organic living organism? And so what I'm beginning to conclude is that oil is a natural process, that the earth appears to have this cycle of life that includes digesting the organic materials of this earth, and whatever waste products are left on this earth, the earth consumes it, and it appears to have some type of metabolism where it digests the materials. And this is not a process that I believe takes millions of years. This process is probably pretty rapid, just like when we eat food and it digests through our body, through our metabolism. It's not a very long process, so this earth must be constantly feeding on the dead fish and the dead animals in the woods. And when you cut your grass, the soil eats all of that up, and I believe it digests that matter, and it forces it down to the bottom of the earth. And so oil could probably be found anywhere. It's just a matter of how deep you gotta dig to find it. It's a natural product of the earth. And now we're starting to figure out what lava is. Lava appears to have a connection with this waste product as well, because the fire purifies all of the materials that are forced down to the earth. And so eventually that matter works its way back up to the top. With volcanoes, it creates a smoke full of carbon. There's also carbon volcanoes. And so this carbon is released back into the atmosphere. And then all of the trees in the forest eat all of that carbon up. And those trees produce oxygen so that we can breathe and produce fruits and foods. And the soil ends up producing all types of materials for the earth. And so this cycle of carbon and oil pushing up through the ground and everything, this all is beginning to appear to be a natural cycle of the earth. This earth that you are living on is very intelligently designed, and this is all evidence of it. There's so many disagreements about how oil is produced by these scientists that I believe that it's time that we begin to consider our own ideas about what oil actually is. I do not believe that it's a process that takes millions of years. So oil is usually found in these oil reservoirs beneath the earth. They're like little pockets of fractures in the earth that hold layers of different types of liquids and gas. Usually there's a rock layer, and then this empty pocket beneath the rock layer has a natural gas layer, and then a petroleum layer because the petroleum oil is lighter than the water. And then it has a water layer under that, and then it goes back to rocks.
Often it is trapped beneath the surface by impermeable layers or rock structures, like faults and folds. Within the crust, oil or gas deposits build up and form reservoirs. Reservoirs are like vast sponges filled with oil and gas.
And so carbon is usually generated by the buildup of fumes and waste byproducts of smoke. When things burn, it releases a smoke substance. And so like if you burn wood in a fireplace, you'll see all this soot build up from the smoke. And so that is pretty much said to be carbon. So lava lets off this carbon, and this carbon apparently works its way up to the surface through fractures in the earth. And so if the scientists are right about this pressurizing of the earth, where this natural process of new dirt pushing down old dirt and then eventually pushing these organic materials beneath the earth deeper and deeper until it is pressurized into an oil-like substance. Well, if organic matter actually does push itself beneath the earth through a natural process, that might explain the purpose of lava. If lava is to burn up whatever makes its way down that far, and then when it burns up, it could release the carbons, and that methane carbon ends up getting trapped in certain areas, getting trapped through fractures of the earth. And when it builds up in these pockets of the earth, it separates back into oil. And so just like our human body naturally produces blood inside of our body, the earth could naturally produce crude oil. So oil could be some type of natural process that the earth creates in order to sustain its life. Scientists have actually come up with some alternate explanations of what oil is recently. I believe with much resistance, they finally have had to admit that oil can be made through other non-organic processes. In fact, there was a German chemist that documented evidence that oil can be produced by non-organic means. In 2009, the Royal Institute of Technology reported that they have proven that crude oil and natural gas can indeed be generated without plants or animals. And so most mainstream scientists used to reject this idea of abiogenic petroleum as an alternate explanation for how oil is formed, but they soon came around after the evidence became clear. And so they have begun to call this abiogenic petroleum, which is pretty much oil that is not connected to any organic origins. And so many scientists now admit that both processes can indeed produce oil. And so oil is mainly hydrogen and oxygen, just like water, but also has a carbon element to it. And so this suggests that oil could be as natural as water beneath the earth. And so some scientists have discovered that they can get oil from this rock. I believe they call this process serpentization. And I believe this process is related to volcanic activity where this rock is like molten and it ends up becoming filled with water and carbon when it's still in its molten stage. And by the time this rock works its way up to the surface, this rock is said to eject petroleum. And so whatever the case is, oil is a natural occurring process beneath the earth. An interesting coincidence is that shale oil sounds a lot like Sheol. We discussed Sheol in detail in my lava and tectonic plates video. And so it's kind of a strange coincidence that shale oil seems to be a play on the word Sheol. And so that might be more than just a coincidence. And so let me know what you think about that. But yeah, so to summarize this video, oil is being found anywhere from less than a quarter mile beneath the earth all the way to 6.5 miles beneath the earth and all the places in between. And so oil definitely seems to be prevalent beneath the earth. The reason it's being produced appears to be some type of natural process. The natural process that creates oil seems to be something to do with the earth being an organic thing, possibly. And so just like a plant creates this process of photosynthesis where it traps energy in its leaves, the earth is generating oil as a natural process. We have also discussed that the earth could be possibly more of a mechanical-like structure, and the oil could have something to do with the operation of the earth. I definitely connect oil to tectonic plates because there's many reports that's where the oil is usually found in the most quantities, is around areas of tectonic and volcanic activity. So the tectonic plate activity suggests that there's some type of movements happening underneath the earth, and this oil must have something to do with that, where it's made to lubricate the tectonic activity. Just like your eyes create this fluid in order to lubricate your eyeballs in order for them to move around properly, the earth must naturally produce this oil in order for something to move around beneath the earth, which is probably the tectonic plates. But whatever the case is, it definitely doesn't seem that you can remove all the oil from the earth. It seems to generate more oil as it is being removed because, like I said, there's many reports that these oil wells will fill back up after the oil is removed. And so this definitely suggests that the process of oil formation is not what we have been told. It's definitely not prehistoric animals and prehistoric plants. The process is much quicker. The process does not take millions of years to generate oil. And so if oil is naturally occurring process that regenerates itself, oil prices would plummet if the world knew that there's massive amounts of oil beneath the earth that doesn't seem to run out. So the barrels of oil would pretty much be dirt cheap. And so let me know what you all think in the comment section. Let me know what you think oil is and how it is being produced. Whatever the case is, it does not appear that oil is fossil fuels. And so let's put our minds together and figure this all out in the comment section, what we think oil actually is. If you support my research, join my Patreon team for $1. I'll send you a sneak peek of unreleased videos before anybody knows about them. And your support helps me be able to create more videos for you all. Visit HQH2O to get rid of the fluoride in your water. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe, and click your notification bell. This has been another episode of Feed Your Mind. Thank you for tuning in. Signing off.
That's the woke news for today, people. I appreciate you tuning in so we can get a little more balance here. I appreciate that was a little jumpy there. I appreciate you tuning in to today's woke news. My name is Murray Rothbeard, and I'm signing off for now. Peace and love. Get woke. Good morning.